JB here, JB here. Hope everybody's doing outstanding. Wednesday, January 29th, 8:57 a.m. on this Fed day. Talk quick about the market, some names I'm looking at, go from there. S&P futures were in the green for most of the morning and have kind of reversed course, slightly in the red here. Same with NASDAQ futures. Well, actually, NASDAQ futures are pretty much flat, but it's going to be one of those big days. I mean, every Fed day is typically hyped up to be a big day, but couple that with what's happened already with this DeepSeek AI garbage or whatever you want to call it. And we have lots of earnings after the close. But it's certainly, and consider where markets are, it's almost like we can go either way. We can start heading back down to where we were at the start of the year, or this could be the start of the next leg to more all-time highs. And considering we were just at all-time highs last week, that's me. I always like to look at the glass half full scenario. I think that would be the most ideal situation set up, but not ruling anything out. Important here, Fed Chair Powell today. I posted on FinTwit. It's like comical. I'm not going to get political or what have you, but you have to think that if he comes out more hawkish or the market doesn't react the way, in a bullish fashion to comments on what the Fed. I mean, the Fed's not going to raise rates today, so it's just going to be about their commentary, their dot plot for rates. If that comes out more hawkish and the market tumbles, it's almost like I think it might reverse because people start thinking that maybe he's going to be removed from his position, which technically is not possible, but hey. So watching the SPY, and I was happy to see it over 600 yesterday. Monday, I was happy to see it over its 50-day moving average. So 605 to me is that big spot. If we get over, I think it's 605.72 somewhere was last Wednesday's low. So that might provide some resistance on the way up. We can chop around. And then after the close today with the earnings, you want to see kind of inline numbers, strong commentary. I think the commentary is probably more important than anything else with Meta and Microsoft, and it's particularly Microsoft. This morning they came out, or at least as a report, that they are saying that DeepSeek infringed on some of their intellectual property. I don't know what, it's all back and forth stuff, but it's just funny how this all just reared to a head over the last couple days. But that's kind of what I'm watching on the overall markets. Also, the US dollar remains stubborn, so hopefully that can find its way down. And I think maybe that's some of the reason that the small caps were struggling yesterday. Yields were pretty much flat yesterday, so I want to see those come back down. And then the small caps, which didn't participate, and you looked at doji candles on the daily. So doji's typically when it closes in between the highs and the lows of the session, they say indecision. So hopefully small caps make up their mind and make a decision and start to outperform. So that's overall market. So individual names, I was talking on the rant yesterday afternoon. I was looking for names to play for bounces after the open yesterday, and then you looked at the name. Shopify's been on my list on both sides, right? For the puts when we had that big sell-off post-Fed, and then as bounces. And you take a look on Shopify, its earnings, great earnings. The stock gapped, ran back in November. It tested, I think it was 120.72, and then it's been chopping around ever since. Hasn't been able to break out of its trend. And then yesterday, no news, no catalyst, and it was just rallying. And I said, wow, some of the best moves are ones that there's no big catalyst to because they can't be killed by news. They can't. So I went and got those Shopify calls within a matter of like 15 minutes. I was able to close them out for over 100%. And then later in the day, I was able to close some more out for for over 500%. I just held some more just for some FOMO. That 120, I think it's 120.75, 120.62, somewhere in there was that level of hit post earnings. If you can break through that, maybe it gets to 125. So riding free with some nice profits already. So kind of takes out some of the emotion of the trade. And especially if there's decent updates from not only the Fed, but the earnings after the close today, maybe shop pushes over that 120 handle. So we'll be watching that today. I'll hold the rest of those strikes. But unfortunately, what happened is I missed out on MDB. I'll talk about that in a second. So in a second, here's Baidu. So, Baidu was languishing all day. It was down at 87. We kind of, I wouldn't say cursing myself, but back on Monday morning, the strikes that I closed some out for 100%, and then later in that morning they were up nearly 400%. I could have closed more out. I passed, and then sure enough, it pulled back, and then it was doing the same thing yesterday. I think it was close over $90, and then it just gave those gains back. And then all of a sudden at 2:30, it was like a magical hand came in to start the rally with Baba, and closed right near highs. 91.93 is that 200-day moving average. If that breaks today and it's gapping above it here today, I'll probably wait for the morning though. It's above that right now. If it holds that, I might look for some strikes into next week because I think this rally in the China names might have staying power. If that's the case, Baidu's going to trade into the 100. So don't be surprised if I add more strikes to play for a move over $100 into next week on Baidu. And I'll hold the rest of my calls I closed more in at the end of the day. Shame, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Or is it the other way around, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I wasn't going to get shamed twice by not closing out some more calls out on BIDU. So I did that at the end of the day. And then I'll look for some more strikes if it holds that 200-day moving average, which brings me to MDB. So unfortunately, I'm staring at Shopify because MDB was stuck at 265 yesterday morning, and then all of a sudden it just started to take off, and it was a nonstop move to the upside. Once it broke 280, I went and got those shots. I was actually looking at the 300s. Some were going through at 40 cents, 35 cents. So I'm kicking myself for not adding those. But I think if Microsoft gives a good update on its cloud and it's bullish, I think that just bodes well for names like MDB. You saw Elastic, ESTC was running yesterday, Snow. So it's down here. It closed at 284. Could be another churn in the morning and then just another rally. And I think it trades into the 300s on a strong update from Microsoft, if even inline. So not only that, you take a look what happened with its earnings back in December. And I was saying this last week and the week before. It had a great results, and the stock was in over, I think it was 420 after hours. And then it opened at then the next morning it was selling off, and then it opened at 340. It's all the way, never looked back. Then it was down to under 240. And it's had this history over the years of having these rallies off the lows. It's had these sell-offs and then bounces. So I think this could just be the start of a move back over $300. That's MDB. Now, which brings me to Adobe. Adobe's up 8 of the past 10 sessions, but it's just not moving quick enough. And my calls are back over 100%. I'm still riding those freebie 460s. The 50-day moving average at 471. I don't know if it's going to get there this week, but it's one of these days going to embark on a 3-4% move. I don't know if, again, Microsoft and Meta earnings after the close are going to push it, but looks strong. It looked weak yesterday, reversed course. I think it was down 431 in the morning, and then reversed all the way up to that 445 handle. That looks like a key breaking point. That 445 breaks today. I think it's off to the races. TripAdvisor, green yesterday. Another one of those pulls in the morning and reversals into the afternoon. So all the way down to 1727 yesterday. I think the day before was 1717. But to me, that means there's buyers there. Consolidation after that huge 10% move last week. I think it's onward and upward for Trip. I'll continue to hold my strikes there. Same with Roku. I try not to talk too much about it because it seems like every time I do, it disappoints. But 86.75 were the highs that hit in December, so that'll be a key spot. If it can break that, I'll still hold my February 110s. I was going to look for February 1.5s, but I'll be patient there, waiting for premiums. Arista Networks. I was talking about Arista while I was doing my rant yesterday afternoon. I think it was 104 and change, and then it was 105, and I keep talking. It's 105.60, and then closed at 106.54. And here it is gapping in the pre-market over 107. I think it was 112 was the level it opened on Monday, and then sold off all the way under 100 to 97. If it finds a bid here today, could be a nice spec lotto trade. So depending, the 112s were 40 cents yesterday, and then it kept moving. Those are obviously going to be substantially higher this morning. The 115s were 25 cents. I was contemplating nibbling those, but I was going to be patient. We'll see what happens here today. But if it finds a bid here at the open, I might look for some calls, because if it breaks those lows from Monday, the highs from Monday, the 112 area, I think that one can take off. And then last but not least is Caterpillar. And supposedly, so there was a pause on the infrastructure spending bill, right? The grants and all that stuff. There's a whole big story in regards to that. So who knows who's getting paid, or if some of these projects going to continue. I think some of the reason why Caterpillar has been under pressure this week, they have earnings tomorrow morning. So could be a nice premium build today, get some strikes. If it finds a bid, close some out or all of them for some profits. If I can get out for 100%, I'll hold the rest into earnings tomorrow. But yeah, I think there's an opportunity here. So the thing is, the report tomorrow, it's a binary event. So I'm not going to add strikes and not close them out before the close, but could be an opportunity. Don't be surprised if I add some strikes there. Interesting news this morning, DJT, right? It's like, it's funny. They came out with a press release saying they're getting into financial services side, and that they're going to allocate $250 million of their cash to Schwab, right? And pretty much without saying it, it looks like they're going to buy Bitcoin, right? So they're going to do a micro strategy kind of scenario here. So just enough to pump the stock. Who knows? Maybe they get it to go, and they'll do that cycle of offerings buy Bitcoin, and the thing could really start to take off. But I just kind of laugh. I'll trade the premiums kind of elevated. So, but it could be one of those, I've always said it back in the day, it's like a proxy, right? So, it's not it's not a fundamental story. It's not really a growth story, at least not yet. So, rants for other days. I'm trying to think. I was still looking at gold, so here it is at $2,800. Got over 2802 in the overnight session, so I'll be watching that. Also, ASML, which kind of like the big name that would kind of put fear in the semi space, reported a beat, and then they just reaffirmed their guidance. And the CEO overnight, because it's in Amsterdam, right? It's a European company. The CEO had a great quote. He said that his earnings were an isle of calm amongst a sea of storm in the semi space. So that's probably a good sign. Also, after the close today, I think Lam Research reports earnings, ServiceNow, IBM, so other names outside of Meta, Microsoft. So will be certainly an interesting after-hours session. And that's it, folks. Out of breath. Let's have a great day. I'll be back later. Rock and roll.